So why should publishers treat each book like a startup?
Well, I think every problem that we have with a book is the fact that it always starts in the same place. There's no audience, there's nobody that knows about it, and that metaphor that we go with in business of startups have exactly the same problem. They have no customers when they start, they're trying to sell an idea into the marketplace, and they're trying to go from zero to somewhere, and books have exactly the same problem. I think it's a really powerful metaphor.
So Agile development is a big thing. It's a big thing here. How can publishers apply a method that largely started from the software world?
Yeah, what I think is the fact that what I'm interested in is minimum viable product. It's a term that's become very popular. Eric Ries, who's speaking here at the conference, has sort of originated it. And I'm interested in the idea of how we take that concept of minimum viable product and apply it to how we develop content. And it could be as simple as, I mean, the problem with books is the fact that we tend to believe that they have to be big and long and carefully constructed. And with minimum viable product, what we do is we say it's really the exact opposite. What is the smallest amount that we have to do? It could be just putting up a splash page and saying, will you share your address? Are you interested enough in this idea to share an address? We're very familiar in book publishing with the idea of pre-sales. Why not sell a book before we actually invest a whole bunch of money in actually going about producing the book?
Right.
Those are just a couple examples of minimum viable product.
So even with something like that, could you judge the idea as a minimum viable product? You know, put that out there and say, should I even pursue this?
Yeah, I think you absolutely could. And I think we do it in the ways I just described in terms of a splash page. It could be taking pre-orders for that the market letting end users rather than distribution channels or retail partners make some sort of decision that way. Another way that we do it is we as publishers tend to go to other industries and almost act as investment bankers. The magazine industry I think of almost as angel investors a lot of times in content, where a feature article maybe in the New York Times magazine that we often see a year or 2 years later ends up becoming a book. They're sort of investing in a much smaller place, less words, less money, and then we come along and say, this is a bigger idea, we could probably turn this into a book. I think that's another example of sort of minimum viable product where we look to other places for MPVs, for things that we can develop into further products.
Now, are there types of books for which lots of iteration and releases won't work?
I usually get that question, and I think the answer is actually no. I mean,
that's interesting.
Because textbooks for a long time have, doing a sample chapter and testing it out in the marketplace. Textbooks manufacturers are very popular with that idea. We talk about minimum viable product. A lot of times we talk about serialization. Dickens gets a lot of credit for having done this. He serialized all of his books first before they became books. And there's also actually lots of history of him going back and listening to reader feedback as he was writing. So this idea of minimum viable product isn't just do small stuff, it's do small stuff and learn from it, right?
So last question for you.
Yeah.
You're actually applying Agile methods in every book as a startup. What have you learned thus far?
If you're going to use the methodology, you have to keep up with it. You have to keep writing with it. You have to sort of, when Tom Wolfe wrote Bonfire of the Vanities, he was having a lot of, it was actually a serialization that ran in Rolling Stones first. And the reason he did it was because I'm having this writer's block, I can't seem to get anywhere with the book. He created these artificial deadlines. I would say someone who wants to apply the same sort of philosophy do the same thing. You've got to sort of stick with it. The second thing I would say is the fact that one of the things that we found is that the infrastructure that you need to make something like this work, I'm not sure is fully developed. For example, we only sell the book right now through O'Reilly.com because they sort of have a platform that makes it easy for you to release new iterations of a given book. You don't have that ability through Amazon or the Nook through BNN.com. When you post a new file, everyone after that point gets the new file, but no one who's already bought it has the old file. So there's a whole set of sort of infrastructure mechanisms, commenting, the ability for a reader to sort of say, yeah, I really like this section, that's largely separated. And the integration of once we send something out to our reader base and let's say they're using a more early adopter app, maybe like ReadMill, where they can leave comments and bookmarks and share that with people. The minute they upload a new version of that EPUB file, they lose all of it.
Right.
And so there's a whole set of infrastructure, I think, that we actually need to kind of go build. We're so used to the book being this thing, we write it once so we don't change it. Well, we've just kind of imported those ideas into the new forms of electronic publishing. I think if we're going to adopt minimum viable publishing as a philosophy, we need to develop some new infrastructure to do that.
Well, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much.